So yeah, so just to reiterate, one of the first few things that we're asked growing up is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you guys said you remember someone said they want to be a pilot. How often have we heard people saying they want to be doctors, teachers? Do you know what I said? So when I was growing up, I said I wanted to be God, which was highly unrealistic. But my point is that I was being asked at an age that I had no idea what was what. I mean, that's how old I was. I said I wanted to be God. I didn't know what was what. So I think from a very young age, there begins this pressure of what you want to be, what you don't want to be, right? So for myself, actually growing up, many years have been filled with this anxiety and this unsurety. And in fact, on my way here, I spoke to a lot of students and I tried to gauge. And I feel like a lot of people are still at that stage where they're not quite sure. So as you said, there's doctors, lawyers. I remember one kid said they want to be an astronaut. My question is, how do you know that's what you want to be? How do you know, for example, for a doctor, how do you know the number of years of med school that you're going to have to go through? The fact that you're responsible for people's lives, everything that goes into it. How can you possibly know? My question around grade 6 was that I wanted to be a vet. Now at that time, I was told, follow your heart. And my heart was telling me that I wanted to be a vet because I loved animals. And I'd go around the neighborhood, I'd, save all the jungli kuttas outside and, bring them back home and look after them. But I spent one summer interning at a doctor's office, and I realized it was the last thing that I wanted to do. And ironically, it was because I loved animals so much that I realized I could not be there to endure their suffering. So when we're told that follow your heart, I think it's the last thing that I would want to do, because my heart might be telling me something, but I might not be able to do that. Also, your heart keeps changing, your feelings keep changing, what you want to do keeps changing. I felt the place that I am, first years out here, second years, third years, and fourth years. All right, do you guys know what you want to do? Yes. You do have somewhere an idea. I can see some no's over here. Throughout your life, you're told to follow your heart. My question is, what does it mean to follow your heart? I don't think it's as simple as following your heart. I think it's much more than that. Our educational system is such that in our O levels, in our A levels, there comes this point, a fork in the road where you have to choose between sciences or you have to choose between business and economics, right? I remember I chose sciences at that point. And then finally, when you get to college, it's like this impending doom coming on you that you have to choose your major, and that major is going to define you for the rest of your life. I realized that some people choose the kind of fields, the careers that they stick to, and most people don't even stick to what they actually choose as their careers. So what you choose in college, in retrospect, doesn't define you. For that matter, I shouldn't be saying this because I'm at a setting where you guys are in college, but some of the most successful people in life are college dropouts, like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, right? I myself went to college. I did not study to be a musician. I studied to be an artist. I went to New York, upstate New York. I studied for 4 years in art. I went to Glasgow School of Art. I had ticked all the right boxes to be an artist. And by the end, when I was coming out of college, I realized that is not really what I wanted to do. It was like one of those relationships where I was like, sorry, art, it's not you, it's me. I've kind of changed my mind because I spent my senior thesis painting and got an idea of what it would feel like to actually be in art full time. And I was like, that's not really what I want to do. So what I realized was that you've got to enter the real world to actually figure it out. for yourself. So I think being in college, having that be the point that you have to choose is actually a very unrealistic, it's an unrealistic deadline for all of us. And so like the 6th grader who has no idea what it's like to be a doctor or a pilot, I have no idea what it is to be an artist. So you really need to try the things. Talking to people, that's not really going to help. It does help a little bit. It gives you a bit of an idea. But it's only when you actually try it that you figure it out. So throughout my career, once I left college, I decided, I said, okay, here's the world. It's open to me. I don't want to be an artist. Now what do I want to do? It sounds very inspiring that, okay, the world was open to me, but it was also extremely, extremely scary. So I went into documentary filmmaking. In New York, I worked for 6 months at one place where I researched for a documentary filmmaker, and I edited on the side as well. After that, I came back to Pakistan and I worked in film as well. And my last job that I had was advertising. I actually worked in advertising for 2 years. And only after that was when in 2011, was when I joined music full time. So that was about 5 years after being in college. Have you heard the saying that you have to kiss many frogs to find your prince? I feel like for myself, that's the way it was with the careers that I chose, the paths that I chose. I feel like those careers, there were these frogs I just had to kiss. And I had to, go through those to find out. But what's interesting is that I try to trace back and I try to see actually how did I end up in music? And it made me realize that opportunity only comes when you put yourself in the way of it. I always loved music. I grew up listening to music. I grew up writing music. And I always did musical theater on the side. When I was in advertising, I would be in advertising from 9 in the morning to about 6, 7 in the evening. And then I joined musical theater production. And that's actually where I first did my first stage musical. And it just so happened that Ruhail Hayat from Coke Studio was attending one of the shows. And he saw me performing on stage along with Sanam Saeed. She was one of the actresses with me. And that was when the first 2 seasons of Coke Studio had happened. And he asked us, he said, would you be interested in doing backing vocals? And at that point, we're like, oh, great, like, let's do it. It'll be a lot of fun. And, we joined Coke Studio. And that was the first time that I received my first paycheck in music. And I realized, I was like, hey, I can actually get paid for something that I love doing. This is something that, and that I really enjoy. And that's when it actually clicked. And it didn't feel like work when I was doing music. Another example I see of where opportunities arise because of you following your heart is my own mother. Actually, she's someone who I looked up to a great deal. I was very lucky. I grew up in a household and I had both sides. I had my mother on one side who said, do what you love doing and worry about the money later. And then I had the very pragmatic side, which was my father, who said, no, you've got to worry about the money. You've got to worry about the bills. You have to figure out, you have to get the accolades. You've got to do the career. You've got to do get the certificates. But I saw my mother and that's why when I went down the art route, then I went down the music route. In fact, she was an English literature teacher for most of her life. And she used to have a blog online. And then it was picked up by a publisher. And now she's writing books. And she's writing her second book. And it's actually in its second print. And it's doing very successfully. So you never know what you're going to run into. So, I chose this picture because I thought it illustrated very well where something starts off at something and you never know where it's going to go. When I was working in advertising, those last 2 years before I went into music, I remember one of the jobs that I got was working for KESC. Do you know what KESC is? Right? Electric company. And my work entailed drawing up their annual review report. And it was the most dry, most boring thing I had ever done. And my grandmother lived around the area where the KESC office was in Sadar. And I remember one of the evenings, spending the evening with her, and we used to call her GM, short for grandmother. And I said, GM, I was like, I don't see how something like this is ever going to lead to anything else. I just absolutely hate it. And she said, she says, no experience is ever wasted. I looked that up on Google and I saw Oprah Winfrey said that, but I think my grandmother said that first. So I'm going to stick to that. But no experience is ever wasted. And this is so true. And because of that, I think it's so important that when we do something, that we do it with all our hearts and we do it well. I really put my heart into that damn review report for KESC. I did it well. I went and I interviewed all the people. I did it really well. But I continuously, now through my musical career, I see things that I never thought would actually, play a part. For example, all those years that I spent in documentary filmmaking and in editing is something I use nowadays. Now, I work on music videos. I edit some of my own music videos. I know the ins and outs of production, the advertising that I did. I know the ins and outs of marketing. I know how to go to a company and tell them, sell to them, sell them an idea. I know where they're thinking of, how they want to actually, how it makes sense to them to do a certain, and to fund me to do my music. So I do believe in doing something well. I believe in not doing jugaad. So I was trying to find an analogy to relate, to compare what I see this as. And have you guys played Ludo before? I think life is like a game of Ludo. Some people know exactly how they want to start, exactly the steps they want to take, where they want to go. I met some of those people today. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. I want to kill them sometimes because I'm like, I wish that was the case for me. But some people don't know. But what's most important is that you keep moving, you keep rolling that dice and you keep moving. Sure, some of your goatees are going to get hit and they're going to go back to the beginning, but you got to keep rolling and keep letting them out, and somehow they're going to reach home. So I think it's important never to settle. I meet a lot of people now in their late 40s and their 50s who are changing careers now, and I think that gives me that added fodder for the fact that there is no deadline. There is no time that you actually be like, okay, this is it. And I think it's very important to keep moving and not settling. When I was my sister was here last year, I think doing a TED talk. And I really liked the way that she basically visualized things. She told me she was sitting on top of our roof in our house, and she was watching a kite. And she very animatedly, she's like, the kite was like this, and then it was like this, and then it would get up, and then it would fall down again. And it was just like, she was like, it was all over the place. And these were her words. She says, you must spread your wings before you can find balance. You will at first take up more space than you actually intend to occupy, or even spaces that you didn't think that you would occupy. But it is unlikely that you will just land on your core beliefs without some fumbling and knocking things around. For myself, writing this for today and actually researching what I was going to talk to you about today was actually very tough, because I find myself at a crossroads once again. I've now been doing music formally for about 8 or 9 years, and I find myself in a position where it's starting to feel like something needs to change. I'm not entirely happy with where I am. I think I need to readdress the kind of music I'm doing, maybe going back to singing in English or change my genre. So it's not always, I feel like I'm in that same situation. It feels a little bit like post-college, where I didn't know where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. But I take comfort in the fact that I felt like this before, and that finding my heart does mean constantly changing your path, and it means constantly trying out things. So I like to use the relationship analogy. I think your work and you, it's like having a relationship. It's something that you have to constantly keep alive. You have to constantly reignite it. And if you don't give it time and attention, it is something that could possibly go stale. So my main question that I want to leave you guys with today is that, and here's something that we're talking about, is that the only constant in life is change. So then why are we so afraid to make changes? So I hope that all of you guys going out into the real world, so to speak, whether you have it figured out or you don't have it figured out, that you have the courage to make the changes when they need to be made, that you never settle, and that you always do what you do with all your heart and follow your heart. All right? Thank you.